Next up, everyone, we have Gian LaVecchia from DoubleVerify, and he is the SVP of Brand and Agency Partnerships. Welcome, Gian.
Thanks so much. Welcome, everyone. I am thrilled to be here today to talk about powering media performance in the age of privacy. As we've all witnessed over the last several years, there's been significant disruption and evolution in the data and privacy sector. Until very recently, marketers were actively leveraging third-party data sets to introduce added precision and impact to their targeting and measurement efforts. Today, as the industry continues to evolve in a post-GDPR and post-CCPA regulatory environment, we're also seeing consumers expressing increased concern related to the integrity of their data privacy. So that, in combination with the looming deprecation of cookies, has created a particularly unique and challenging environment for marketers. So it begs the question, how can marketers best navigate this new complex marketplace while still extracting the full potential of their digital marketing investments? At DV, we've been laser focused on driving and developing innovative privacy-forward product solutions that offer measurement precision and agility. And today we're going to walk through one of those industry-leading initiatives. But before I do that, and there I am, before I do that, I thought it'd be helpful to begin the conversation today really articulating what those core drivers of media quality are. So number one, fraud. Was the ad served to an actual real human and not a bot? From a viewability perspective, did the ad actually have an opportunity to be seen and actually perform against those outcomes established while setting up the campaign? From a safety and suitability perspective, was the ad adjacent to content that was directly aligned with that brand's core values? And fundamentally, from a geography perspective, was that ad served in the intended geo? While fundamental, you'd be surprised how many marketers are actually evaluating these individual metrics in isolation. That's why at DV, we developed the DV Authentic Ad, which is the singular and definitive measure of digital media quality, which is MRC accredited and ensures each and every impression is viewable, brand safe, fraud-free, and delivered in that geography. This has been catalytic to our growth to date and still remains a differentiator in the marketplace. So now that we've established that media baseline, let's talk about attention, as there's a really unique opportunity to start introducing privacy-based, attention-based signals to add more depth and definition to how we're actually evaluating performance. So today, I'd like to introduce our new product solution, DV's Authentic Attention, which is our proprietary data solution that helps provide actionable insights, not only provide, but surface those insights into what truly drives campaign effectiveness. So again, using that DV Authentic Ad as that media quality baseline, again, delivering against those 4 components I mentioned earlier, we evaluate 50+ data signals at the impression level to surface insights against 2 specific performance data cohorts. We've defined those as exposure and engagement. That is the foundation of our authentic attention proposition. So how does it work? Let's take a closer look. So again, based on those 50+ data points calculated in real time across the entirety of your display and video media mix, we use those inputs to inform 2 different performance indices. First being the exposure index, which is really focused on measuring the intensity and prominence of that ad experience. So some of those measures would include viewable time, video presentation, ad share of screen, etc. And the other performance index that we have here is our engagement index, which is really focused on confirming 2 components. Number one, confirming that there's actually a user behind the engagements that we're observing. And secondly, really measuring the depth of that user engagement with that ad experience. Again, this is a catalytic industry evolving initiative that is really transforming a verification player that traditionally operated within that media quality space into one that is driving and laser focused on elevating performance for our brand partners. And most excitingly, we're actually extending into CTV this year. CTV is obviously a major growth area in our industry and remains a priority for DV. So expect more output in CTV moving forward. Let's dig a little bit further into the framework of how this actually works. So from an exposure index perspective, first we'll measure display intensity. So as you can see here on the CNN.com homepage, this header placement has an average viewable time of 36 seconds, quite strong. As that user scrolls down to the middle portion of the section, you'll see a 300 by 250 ad placement here with an average viewable time of 23 seconds. that variance in performance will be factored into the scoring methodology. And of course, if there was an ad placement below the fold that was not viewable, it would not be factored into our authentic attention analysis. From a video intensity perspective, we're measuring a few different components. So A, measuring prominence, right? Was the video fully on screen? What was the time in view? What was the completion rate? How was the user engaging from a playback perspective? Was the video viewable? Was audio activated? So all of these measures go into providing in informing our exposure index score. And from a share of screen perspective, in this instance, size certainly does matter, as we're looking at 3 different screen canvases here. We've got our desktop, tablet, and mobile. As you can see here, that same 300 by 250 ad placement absorbs varying levels of real estate. So on that mobile device, it's actually 24% of the screen, which is more than 3x the prominence of that desktop placement. Thereby, that placement would achieve a higher scoring. As we now look into the engagement metrics, we're looking at these 2 components of user presence and ad interaction. So again, first confirming that the user is present at the device when the ad is viewable. And then of course, we're going to measure any of those ad interactions. And we're looking at both ad interactions, device, browser, etc. And some of those metrics would include capturing some of those native sensory engagements on the device, like touch, click, scroll, hover, swipe, etc. Was the screen in landscape or portrait mode? Was the ad experience, did it absorb the full screen? From a playback perspective, how actively engaged was the user in actually playing the video, pausing, skip, replay, etc. And certainly from an audio perspective, we'll want to measure whether audio was enabled and whether they were actually manipulating sound and muting along the way. So let's see DV authentic attention in action. So today I'm going to walk you through 2 different use cases, one focused on campaign optimization and one focused on post-campaign analytics to provide a little bit more texture and context to what we're talking about today. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 performance indices. First here is the engagement index, which you see here across the horizontal axis, exposure index here captured on the vertical. And obviously, when we're talking about indexes, anything above 100 will indicate media or placements that are over-delivering against average performance. So in this example here, overall performance here at the attention index level, which is the overall performance of this campaign, was at 132. That's representative of a 32% overachievement against industry average performance. Certainly on the right side here, you'll see particularly strong engagement index score of 144, again, 44% above average. But there's an opportunity here to drive some improvement as we talk about exposure, as exposure was below 100 and certainly suggests that there's an opportunity to improve performance. So how does it work? So here's an example of a campaign, and the size of the bubble in this instance is representative of the impression volume behind this particular campaign. And overall, the campaign performed well. Right, we had an authentic viewable rate of 68%. The overall performance of the campaign was at 149, which is considerable. Engagement was at 171, again, 71% above average, exceptionally strong. But again, there was an opportunity to improve exposure index. So let's see how we can make some changes there. So once we dig into site-based analysis, we start to look at how these sites are plotted on this quadrant here. So as you can see in this top left quadrant, you've got high engagement, low exposure. The majority of those sites performed well against engagement objectives. And as we scroll to the right here, we're seeing that a few sites actually scored well for both exposure and engagement. And we've all been kind of trained and engineered as marketing professionals to kind of always aim for that type right quadrant. And that philosophy certainly extends here. So one of the optimization outputs here, obviously, would be, immediately begin to adjust investment decisioning and start shifting dollars into those higher performing sites. Quite basic. Another output, though, is you can start to consider establishing direct buys with some of these partners that may have been part of an exchange and/or ad network play. So a couple just immediate opportunities to enhance and elevate performance of this particular campaign. Now let's get into a post-campaign analysis discussion. So we're going to look at that same campaign and really start to understand how those marketers can optimize creatives, which is really exciting. And again, a territory in our space that really hasn't existed prior to today. So here's an example of a video placement. Again, strong viewable rate at 82%, overall attention index score of 102, 2% above average, but we're seeing some opportunities to improve on the engagement front. So let's dig in a bit closer. So here we see two creatives, creative 2 and creative 3, where we're going to focus on. One is certainly in the other. But why did the underperformer fall short? So taking a closer look here, and when we start digging into this ad exposure analysis from a video level, some signals quickly emerge, right? So first off, completion rate was quite low. 68% of the viewers watched this ad all the way through. And another area of concern was that viewability dropped to 46% by the fourth quartile, right? Started out strong at 96, but dropped precipitously at 46. And certainly audibility started low and remained low at 2%. Now, as I'm looking at this, a couple considerations come into play. Obviously, the creative didn't engage or energize the audience to keep them focused and engaged throughout the completion of the video. And you start to see some of the signals that can emerge for a creative director thinking about their next creative strategy. But now let's look at the higher performing creative. When we look at video ad exposure analysis on this one, we're seeing that this creative is actually driving significantly stronger performance. Overall, a 133 attention index, again, 33% above the norm. Almost 80% of these users watched the ad all the way through. And again, viewability remained high at 77% through the fourth quartile. Started at 96 and maintained that level throughout, which is exceptionally strong. And again, here we saw audibility remaining 20% throughout the video. So the content was resonating with audiences, and the audio was actually adding something incremental to the experience. So some optimization opportunities can come out of this. Obviously, you can start to shift focus and impression volume against those higher performing creative units in future campaigns. What I find particularly exciting is that you can get really unique insights to understand what are those creative attributes that ultimately work hardest and best for that brand. What combination of headline, call to action, and imagery are driving a higher level of conversions? And I think, having in my prior life worked with creatives hand in hand, this is the type of data, this is the type of insight that they're clamoring for to really elevate the impact and efficacy of the digital media campaigns they're putting in market. So again, data that drives agile decisioning. So here are just a few other examples of some of the decision that comes out of our authentic attention solution. So from a site and app perspective, we can build inclusion lists to target high performing sites and apps, quite obvious. But another really interesting opportunity here is why not establish those direct private deals with those top performing publishers? From a creative perspective, we can begin to identify what those top performing creatives are. We can begin to get much more granular with how we're kind of deconstructing some of the video experiences and play with where the call to action lives within the video experience and what quartile that should sit in. From a device perspective, we can begin to target higher performing device types and browsers. From a PMP perspective, again, another opportunity to drive some investment decisioning, doubling down on those cost-efficient PMPs with the highest performance. Ad size is another area that we can investigate. And as we move through the remainder of this year, we're going to continually expand and elevate what this solution actually entails. So later on in 2021, we're going to add in another layer here to provide some contextual insight to provide greater transparency into the content that's driving and affecting some of these KPIs. And finally here, DV Authentic Attention is just one component of our DV performance solution portfolio. Again, coming up later this year, we will be launching Custom Contextual, which will be laser focused on improving the targeting accuracy to engage audience throughout the customer journey. We're going to get very granular in understanding what content consumption patterns and insights are to improve the overall impact of your marketing efforts. So with that, thank you so much. And I would love to engage in some Q&A, if you don't mind.
Thanks so much, Gian. Really appreciate your time. Hello, everyone. If you guys weren't in the platform group yesterday, I'm Christina Monlos. I'm the senior marketing editor at Digiday, and I'll be the co-pilot here for the next couple minutes and then session. So Gian, quick cue. Does authentic attention provide value for branding and direct response campaigns?
Yeah, absolutely. So while this is certainly a performance-based initiative, there's applicability for both DR and brand activation. So if we go back to that quadrant analysis, we could argue that direct response is primarily focused on exposure on engagement, right? It could thrive in a high exposure, high engagement realm, but certainly from a high engagement, low exposure realm, you're seeing that level of participation with the ad moving key metrics forward. From a branding perspective, certainly exposure plays a key role here and starts to, we actually have a couple case studies that dimensionalize real movement against some of the hardest brand attributes to shift, right? So we saw unaided brand awareness lifts of, almost double-digit lifts. We see lifts in brand favorability, purchase intent, et cetera. So certainly applicability regardless of the objective. And again, as we continue to refine and update the solution over time, it's only going to get more comprehensive and relevant.
Sure. Okay. So you showed a bunch of different metrics. For our audience, of all the metrics you measure, are there some that you consider to be more important than others? Like, what are the metrics that people should, I don't know, if you're ranking metrics, these are the top ones.
Yeah. Yep. So the beauty of this index is that we're actually providing a holistic, overarching view of performance. I think one of the challenges of this industry has been that we overstated the value of viewability, right? And we're using that as a singular metric to drive optimization decisioning. The beauty of the attention index and what we're talking about today with authentic attention is that we're combining 50 plus data signals, right? Each of which plays a core role in driving performance, driving exposure, driving engagement. And it's really that holistic proposition that we believe offers the most value to audiences and also adds a little bit more depth and breadth to the way we're analyzing performance rather than relying on one or two singular measures.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you so much. I would just lastly love to know if you were thinking about the New York Magazine approval matrix as you were building out your own matrix. I don't know if that's something you read. But
no, I highly doubt it, possibly. You never know. You never know.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, I'm sure they'll be able to find you. Thanks again for joining us.